네, 그럼
Now let us begin our session, a study on the improvement quality tourism focused on Jeju province. I'm Choi Ji-hee, moderator for the session. Now let me gladly introduce today's moderator. The moderator for this session is Professor Hong Seong-hwa. Professor Hong Seong-hwa is teaching at Tourism Management Department of Jeju National University's Economics and Commerce College. He's also serving as chairman in Jeju Tourism Society, a director of the MICE sector project. And previously he served as a vice chairman of Korea MICE Association. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Hong Seong-hwa.
Thank you so much. My name is Hong Seong-hwa. Despite your busy schedule, many of you presented here. Thank you very much. So I'd like to introduce our speakers and panelists. First, the Professor Kim Chul-won from the Kyung-hee University. So he will be the main speaker, and the second speech will be provided by the research fellow of Jeju Research Institute Shin Dong-il. And also the member Oh Young-hee is here. And Halla University's Moon Sung-jong. And also the Vice President Robert Yaya is here today. So today's topic is study on the improvement of quality tourism focused on Jeju province. So after the two main the presentations, there will be the panel discussion. When we talk about the quality tourism, many are raising a variety of voices. So I think the quality tourism means sustainable tourism. That means it is environmentally sustainable and economically sustainable as well. In addition, local residents and local tourism, the businesses, they should win together. I think that will be the achievement of the quality tourism. So we have invited two experts here, and we will hear insights from them. I really look forward to their presentation. Then first I'd like to invite Professor Kim Chul-won for the first presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kim Chul-won from Kyung-hee University. It is my great pleasure to be part of the Jeju Forum and talk about the measures to improve the tourism in Jeju, especially quality tourism. Today, well, I have been part of the Jeju Forum since its beginning, and this time it's even more meaningful for me to be part of the presentation. On my way to Jeju this time, I have thought a lot about quality tourism in Jeju, and we have panels here. Then I have changed my presentation materials a little bit, and I will talk about measures to enhance quality tourism. So I will begin my presentation with the changes that COVID-19 has brought and the performance and limitations of Jeju tourism in terms of light and shadow. And the theme for today, the quality growth. So how to achieve the quality tourism in Jeju? So that will be covered a little bit in my presentation. So COVID-19 has greatly impacted on the tourism around the world, as well as ecosystem. So international organizations like OECD and others predict that only after 2023, the world will recover to the level of the 2019. and international tourism and the recovery speed will be satisfactory by the time of like 2024. That's what we expect today. So there's a lot of changes in tourism industry. So how we can restart the tourism industry? There's a lot of issues, and we are thinking about measures to do that. But with the COVID-19 pandemic, it is still very difficult. From this perspective, we are seeing a new trend are coming up in tourism industry. Like they are looking for more clean tourism, and they are focusing more on the wellness, and new generation are leading a new trend in tourism industry. So we are seeing many changes in tourism industry, and also more people are looking for the family-oriented tourism as well. So we have this new trend, which is between in 2021. It's 7 keywords. So this trend is looking for a new experiences and having safe tourism experience in clean tourism destination, looking for healings. So this kind of trend is what we can find in Jeju Island, I think. Because Jeju has a lot of factors that satisfy this demand or this needs. So that's the trend that appeared because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in Jeju we have seen a lot of development and growth in terms of tourism, as you can see on this slide. So, but now it has decreased because of COVID-19. So we see a lot of performance in terms of Jeju tourism, but at the same time we have seen a lot of shadows. For example, infrastructure the growth in tourism industry in Jeju Island includes the increased infrastructure. However, we also have like an adverse effect, like the land prices has gone up dramatically, and the beauty of Jeju Island has been destroyed a lot. And just like Bali, Indonesia, we are seeing a lot of traffic jams and a lot of garbages as well. So that raises question if Jeju has really achieved the true growth and development in terms of sustainable tourism. And that raises a question if that's the limitation of Jeju tourism. So even they say that do not come to Jeju Island. But many younger generations are trying living 1 month in Jeju Island. Still, in terms of duration of stay, well, tourists in Jeju are staying shorter compared to Bali and Hawaii. So what you see here is the evaluation model for tourism competitiveness by Korea National Tourism Organization. So here it has a multiple indicators like inclusive growth, tourism performance, and others. And a extensive research was made in 2018 and 2019. So for sustainable and inclusive growth and tourism, but it turned out that the indicators for inclusive growth has been relatively gone down. So that shows the limitation of qualitative growth. And generally, the Jeju citizens has rather low awareness. So that could be the limitation in terms of Jeju tourism industry. So what this means is that qualitative growth has its own limitation, not only for the quantitative growth as well. So this is about COVID-19. So as I mentioned briefly earlier, Korean people cannot go overseas for sightseeing, and because of that, a lot of people have growing interest in traveling to Jeju. Well, a while ago, KBS, a Korea broadcasting system, covered about the dilemma that Jeju Island has as a tourist destination. So internally, there could be a lot of adverse effects as more people are traveling to Jeju. So that is the one of the important points that we have to think about. So today's theme is about quality tourism and how to enhance the tourism industry in Jeju Island. So the reason why we are together here and talk about this issue is to come up with the measures to mitigate the negative effect and promote positive effect. So today's conclusion can be a very great implication on this subject. So now let's move on to discussing the growth in quality tourism. So quality tourism doesn't mean that we don't need to quantitatively grow. It means that the growth should be managed on the process. So quantitative growth is needed, but at the same time, we have to think about the management of the growth from the qualitative perspective. So that kind of perspective first suggested by Thomas Ko in 2007 with his book, with his opinion that says bigger isn't always better. I only have 15 minutes, so I cannot go deeper, but
이거에 대해서 포커스를 맞출 필요성이 있다라는 것을 우리가 알 수 있고요. 그리고 이제 그 사람의 경험들, 이거는 이제 똑같은 그 뭐 리조트나 똑같은 경험이나 똑같은 서비스라도 어떤 사람은 굉장히 좋게 반응하는 게 있고, 어떤 사람 부정적으로, 어떤 사람 무관심하고, 이게 어떻게 보면 소비자 계층이라는 거죠. 그래서 이제 어떻게 관광이라는 이런 측면들이 관광의 질적 경험을 높여야 된다 이 얘기를 하지만은 또 이 소비자의 계층에 따라서 그게 참 매치하기 어려운. 그래서 관광이라는 게 구경꾼의 지식을 가지면 모든 해결책이 있는 것 같은데 실제 솔루션을 내면 굉장히 어려운 게 이런 소비자들의 여러 가지 프레퍼런스들이 다르기 때문에라는 것이고, 어떤 사람들은 이러한 상황들을 굉장히 한라되기 깊은 곳이라고 생각하는데 어떤 곳에서는 이것을 지옥 같은 현상이라고 얘기하고, 그래서 이런 것들을 어떻게 조화를 시켜서 이 양적 성장과 함께 내실화하는 질적 성장을 가져가야 되는 이런 이슈들이 존재를 하고요. 그리고 이제 관광객들은 이제 항상 이제 인식을 이제 만리장성, 뭐 제주도 하면은 뭐 연상되는 브랜드 이미지들이 있는데 실질적으로는 뭐 이러한 뭐 엄청난 많은 사람이 와서 이 혼잡도가 일어나고 뭐 오버 투리즘이 일어나고 이런 현상들, 뭐 이게 똑같은 뭐 파리의 로만스 이렇게 얘기하지만 실질적으로는 많은 이런 이슈들이 현실적으로 발생을 하고 있는데, 사실 제주도를 방문하다 보면 중국 관광객이 안 오고 어떻게 보면 코로나로 심해서 조용할 때가 너무 제주의 다움이 느껴지고 제주의 참 이 맛을 이렇게 느끼는 것들을 볼 수가 있습니다. 그래서 이런 것들을 어떻게 조화롭게 생각을 하면서 발전시켜 나갈 것인가가 이제 오늘의 방안이 아닌가 생각이 됩니다. 그래서 이제 뭐 우리 그 발표 자료에 뭐 질적 건강을 위한 이제 전제 조건에 대해서 이제 많은 것을 얘기를 했습니다. 많은 것을 얘기를 했는데 사실 뭐 하나하나 이렇게 말씀드리기도 좀 그렇고 어떤 뭐 이 발표 자료를 뭐 해야 돼 저기 참고해 주시면 좋겠고요. 어쨌든 간에 이 정책, 주민, 방문객들 이런 모든 게 이제 심바이어스의 어떤 상생적으로 같이 어떤 방문객들에게 경험을 제공하는 방향으로 나가야 된다라는 것이고 그걸 위해서 여러 가지 인프라도 개발하고 상품도 개발을 하고 또 지역 주민의 삶의 질도 높여야 된다는 게 이제 이 내용이 되겠습니다. 그래서 그런 것들을 이제 말씀을 드리고 일일이 뭐 하나하나 말씀드리지는 않겠습니다만은 이런 전제 조건, 성장 담론과 이런 전제 조건을 가지고 어떻게 그러면 내실화할 것인가의 방안에 대해서 좀 더 고민하는 시간을 갖겠습니다. 사실 그 관광이라는 건 이렇게 아까도 말씀드렸지만 구경꾼의 지식을 가지고 만들어낼 수 있는 부분이 아니고 정말 복합적으로 체계적으로 접근해야 된다는 거죠. 세계적인 관광지를 보면 다 잘 짜여진 시스템으로 이루어진다는 거예요. 예산, 정책, 그리고 콘텐츠 또 이런 것들이 이 집계 효과를 하고 보는 즐거움이 있고 사는 즐거움이 있고 먹는 즐거움이 있고 그러다 보니까 투자도 늘어나고 그래서 이제 선순환 구조 속에서 발전해 나가는 것들을 볼 수가 있죠. 그래서 이 관광 내실화는 이 시스템적으로 접근을 해줘야지 이러한 지속 가능한 관광도 만들고 질적 성장도 이루어질 수 있다는 것을 말씀을 감히 드리겠습니다. 그래서 관광은 시스템이다. 체계적인 시스템이다라는 것을 말씀을 드리겠고요. 이제 이 제주 관광의 질적 관광을 성장하기 위해서는 여기서 나와 있듯이 많은 뭐 이런 이슈들이 있습니다. 그래서 정부에서도 사실은 중앙정부에서도 그 질적 관광에 대해서 굉장히 우리가 막 1900만 명 이렇게 모으고 뭐 2000만 명 유치하는 관점에서 새로운 질적 관광 성장에 대해서 이렇게 정책도 가져가게 되고 사실 제주도도 보면 이미 2016년부터 이 질적 성장을 위한 인식을 가지고 중요성을 가지고 여러 가지 지표들도 만들고 추진하는 것들을 볼 수가 있습니다. 그러나 이제 이게 실천이 전략이라는 것처럼 실천적 관점에서 우리가 계속 다시 한번 짚고 넘어가야 될 필요성이 있지 않나 생각이 되고요. 뭐 신동일 박사님도 계시지만 예, 정책적으로
one by one. So, the quality and policy is different. Quality and Jeju Island. So if you put it this, it's about like finding the true the Jeju Island. Then what is the true Jeju? So there should be a lot of thinking on this. So from the point of the sustainability, I think, well, we have to think about it. So I think the Singaporean case can be a good example for us to benchmark. So in Singapore, mind share and wallet share and herd share, these are the new items. So, well, there are three of them. So, well, emphasizing the value and the tourists, so they can feel something and they can open their wallet and that they can share what they thought. So in this way, we can apply these to Jeju Island. We can make our tourists be aware of the colorfulness of Jeju Island, and in that way, the tourists can open their wallets in Jeju Island also. So that's the point of view. And the next one is the indicators that I prepared during the doctorate course. Well, actually, I would like to touch on each of these items one by one, but I can't do that due to the constraints. So among these several indicators, well, I would like to just pick some of these. Then, what should Jeju Island do to advance its tourism acceptance posture? So some can be done, but some cannot be done. So we have to be aware of the fact and find the solution to improve what we are not good at, and then we can improve that fact to improve the satisfaction for the tourists through the consulting. So it should not be done only once, but it should be done continuously. Then we can advance our tourism acceptance posture, and also the quality tourism and qualitative growth can be done. And then how can we improve our quality of the tourism service in Jeju Island? So, well, in some of the publications, the solutions were already mentioned. Well, quality improvement is done by the Korea Tourism Organization. Is it sufficient? However, we have to think about it. So for the quality improvement, I think we need to change shift our paradigm. And so also we have to think about the service science for quality. And also the Jeju Island has mountains and the seashores all together. So I think, well, each area can have distinctive tourism course. And also the growth is important. But there's a limit to achieve all those diversity and to achieve the balanced growth, but still we have to think about it. What would be the onshore tourism? And we have to come up with some of the solutions. Well, maybe we can find another the trekking course in the ocean also. So, well, Jeju Island has the same question as the ocean, the tourism countries. So we have to think about this also to seek for the balanced growth in the local community. And by conducting research on these kind of items, we can contribute to the development of the Jeju tourism. And it is closely related to quality tourism as well. Well, my time is up already, but for the sustainable tourism development and management, what should we do? Well, many are actually working very hard and they are sparing no effort. But let's take an example of Australia's the Canberra. They are making the sustainable tourism indicators, they are measuring them, and they are monitoring these indicators to manage the tourism in a sustainable manner. The virtual circle solution could not come out yet because the constant monitoring was not done, so we can reflect on that matter. And the next question would be, for the responsible tourism realization, what should Jeju do? And the Jeju Special Island made the ordinance to support and nurture the fair tourism. Well, fair tourism is a buzzword for the tourists and also the tourism businesses. So while having ethical mindset for these tourism businesses and tourists is also a key task. the carbon neutrality and carbon footprint reduction. To that end, actually, a kind of city tour product can be made too. So in terms of the fair tourism or the responsible tourism, they can be a solution. And while the Jeju Island is trying to host the COP28 in this way, in this manner also, well, there would be some preemptive measures for the responsible tourism. So in the long term, I think the Jeju Island can contribute to this kind of responsible tourism. Well, I think, I spoke too long. Lastly, I would like to talk about the brand of the Jeju Island as a tourism destination. So we have to find the proper position for the Jeju Island. And I think actually Jeju Island can leverage the new Korean wave tourism concept. Well, I think the Jeju Island is not fully ready to make a good use of this new Korean wave, but I think we can think about this. And to enhance its value as a tourism destination and manage it well, what should we do? Well, in fact, actually, the landscape and natural aspect are almost the same. Then what would be the difference? So we need a strategy to reposition the Jeju Island. And I think if Jeju Island implements the coloring, the marketing and branding, I think it can make the Jeju Island very different and outstood. And when we look into the OECD statistics, we can come up with this kind of the phenomenon. So local residents should be happy, and that would be the policy task. And we have to think about how we can make the residents happy. And in digital transformation is a very key issue for everyone, so we have to leverage it too. Business development and R&D center, these things can be established in Korea, and especially in Jeju Island. Still, I firmly believe that the Jeju Island has competitiveness. But I think the Jeju Island can be praised later. And I think we should take a kind of creative way of thinking so that we can improve the Jeju Island's tourism. So in the future, and at the present anyway, well, if we enhance the quality tourism of Jeju Island, there is an answer and we can do it better. I'm kind of sorry that I spoke too long, but thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much.
하고 싶은 말씀이 너무 많으셔서
I think you had a lot of things to say. And the advancement of the quality tourism and responsible tourism and repositioning were mentioned here. And one thing I remember is that, well, when we think about the tourism, the qualitative and quantitative, they are the opposite concept, but I think, well, we can embrace these together. And next, I would like to invite the research fellow Shin Dong-il from Jeju Research Institute.
I will be brief. As he said, in 2000, I came back to my hometown, Jeju. And soon after that, the research institute that I'm working for has been part of the Jeju Forum. So this today it's very meaningful personally. And now I'm sitting at this in this chair, but I cannot clearly see my slide here, so I'm kind of worried about my presentation. That's why I put a lot of pictures into my material. So the professor focused more on external perspective and advice on consultation, but let me put my perspective internally. But still, we need to think about qualitative growth. So starting from last year, for more than a year and a half, we are suffering from pandemic, which has been unimaginable. So this has been crisis, but at the same time, it can be a very important turning point for Jeju tourism. So that's how I console myself. Well, this pandemic is not just first one that we confronted. In 2002, we had SARS, but that lasted only for 114 days. And in 2015, the MERS lasted only 69 days. That's why we were kind of thinking that the COVID-19 would go away very soon. But still it's here, and nobody knows when it will end. So now we are talking about with coronavirus. That may mean that it will be with us forever, maybe. So this is the same coronavirus with the SARS and MERS, but it has brought unimaginable and unexpected consequences into our lives. So May last year, we had like 5.77 million confirmed cases, but today, this year we had more than 1.50 million confirmed cases, and we thought that maybe the virus will go away during the hot summer, which was not true. And we thought that maybe Jeju tourism will recover when the summer season came, but that was not the case. And already a year has passed. And no one knows how long it would go. It would stay with us. So the tourists in the past were like customers and consumers, but now we see tourists as a possible virus spreaders. They are visitors, but we cannot just welcome them. So that is a very important implications for Jeju tourism. So this is the, you can see those birds stuck into the propeller of the airplane because the airplanes have been idle for a long time. In EU, as you can see, the impact has been great. And this is the case of China. And as you can see, the figure in this bill is wearing a mask. The Chinese population has a great impact on tourism around the world and in Jeju as well. So Jeju used to have, Chinese people accounted for a lot of tourists in Jeju. And that, the casino industry in Jeju Island has been greatly impacted by this decrease of Chinese tourist population. So many people are concerned if Jeju tourism will end like this. So this is what we see as changes because of the COVID-19 and how Jeju is adapting the impact of COVID-19. As Professor Kim said, he mentioned about Jeju Daum, which means the being Jeju or like Jeju. So that, my ID in SNS also means something like that, being Jeju or like Jeju, the true color of Jeju. So I always think about that question. So at this situation, we have Treble bubble system around the world. But as a researcher, I have this question if Treble bubble can bring benefits or minus effect. So we cannot go to European countries and America. So a lot of people are coming into Jeju Island. But when those restrictions are lifted, they will go overseas. But can foreigners come into Jeju Island? Well, the reason why I mentioned about the great number of possible tourist number is because if we don't have this travel bubble with China, Chinese people cannot come to Jeju Island. And in reality, why travel bubble is difficult? Because it is not admitted or recognized in with the China. So that is the important question. If China goes green light on this travel bubble system, but that still raises a lot of questions. So we just simply be happy about this travel bubble system. So it has its own benefits, but from the perspective of Jeju and Jeju tourism, where everything is not bright because Jeju is inbound market, not outbound market. We are not sending out tourists. We are accepting and welcoming tourists into Jeju. So let me turn to qualitative growth indicators.
So I looked into these English Tourism Council's the sustainable tourism indicators. When you look at the Okinawa, it also used the indicators, the environment and the nature, and these indicators were used as a strategic industry in the 21st century. The tourism should be facilitated and developed further. Well, I think Okinawa has kind of like a detailed the indicators, so it has more detailed indicators than Korea. Well, when I was thinking of and agonizing about the Jeju tourism, for about like 10 years, I made some the things. So I made some indicators. That was the goal of the inbound the tourists. And this year the number is this, so next year's number will be this. So I was trying to set each year's the tourist goals. Looking back into in 2005, about 15 years ago, the number of tourists to Jeju Island was only 5 million, and after 10 years, the number soared. Well, at that time, Jeju Island was called that it's only domestic the tourist destination with only 5 million the tourists. It's difficult to host the economic development, and at that time local residents' population was also about the 600,000. So that was very small. But as of 2015, the population soared to 15 million. And there was a kind of like the industrial wind called the over-tourism. So starting from the Seongsan 일출봉, well, there were some cases. I'm mentioning these names because you know these names already. Well, there was a saying that like all those land were bought by Chinese, and the Jeju Island is now like Chinese island. Even like some extremists expressed in that way. So Jeju Island was called like it was quantitatively destroyed. So there was kind of like the worrisome voices like this. I'm not saying like, well, these expressions are totally wrong, but I would say, well, because we are collecting these kind of like negative voices, we are like kind of going in that way, it seems like. And the Jeju Island declared that it would be the first year of quality tourism growth. And we prepared these indicators. So from now on, we would not focus on the number of tourists, but instead we would think about the days of staying or the individual, the per capita expenditure or satisfaction level of tourists. And that was actually developed in 2016. I think it's a very positive phenomenon, and making this kind of the growth indicators back in 2016, I think it demonstrates that Jeju Island has high competitiveness. And the COVID-19 era brought another shock. So we have to use more indicators. So now it's difficult to demonstrate the qualitative growth of the Jeju Island industry of tourism with only using these 5 indicators. So why are we using these 5? Well, actually, these indicators were actually aiming to there was a demonstrator saying that like we have to wrap up the session. So, well, it was actually aiming to overcome the weakness of the tourism in Jeju Island. So let's fix some of those weaknesses in Jeju. So that is why we made these 5 indicators. Well, once again, moderator asked me to finish this. So, well, last but not least, I have to say there are 2 the most important topics here. The coexistence of human beings and environment, and the Jeju Island's residents and tourists, they should live and stay together. So these 2 are important. And in that sense, I have prepared these kind of indicators here. So there are 10 of them. If we use these indicators, and then I think we can make our Jeju tourism better. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but well, thank you very much for understanding. So you talked about the Jeju Island's the quality growth and also the gaining and loss. We really have to think about that. Let's move to the panel discussion. And the panelist will be Oh Hyung-hee, the vice chief of the committee.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be part of this discussion. I'm vice chief of the committee of Jeju Self-Governing Provincial Council Culture, Tourism, Sports Committee. So Professor Kim and senior researcher Sin Thank you for your insightful presentation. Focusing on Jeju area, I think the improvement of quality tourism is a very timely issue, and this is very meaningful. We have this coronavirus pandemic, which has a great impact on tourism industry. But at the same time, it suggests ways to improve the tourism. So it has provided crisis, but the opportunity as well. So by using big data analysis, we are opening a smart tourism. In the post-COVID-19 era, there is going to be a lot of changes in tourism industry. Disease prevention activities in tourist destination and safety issues will be enhanced. And tourists are looking for destinations, less crowded destinations, and searching for their own way of enjoying their tour. In 2016, we had more than 15 million people at its peak. But from there, because of that deployment, the number has gone down. But after that, the number was recovering. But then we had this COVID-19 pandemic. But it has a lot of implications that we can think about. Not only quantitative growth, there's other things qualitative things that we have to consider. So from that perspective, I think this is time that tourists are waiting for time that they can come. And in order to have the competitiveness in terms of tourism, we need more and newer content. We can take the example of, we can compare the duration of stay of tourists in Jeju and other destinations like Bali and Hawaii. So in order to enhance the tourism in Jeju, we have to make a diagnosis why it is like that way. And the direction for the qualitative growth indicator, I think it is a very timely question. So car camping and sharing accommodation are kind of new trend, and more people are considering others when they're enjoying their time. Recently, we are seeing the Treble bubble and immunity passport. So it seems like the end is at the end of the tunnel. At this point, we need to manage these qualitative growth indicators. So to consider environment, humans, and others, these qualitative growth indicators are very important. Jeju tourism has been mainly focused on quantitative, but now it's time for Jeju to have the balance between quantitative and qualitative tourism growth. Today, this time, it's very important for Jeju tourism to have a tipping point, to have a better future. Thank you for listening.
고영희 의원님.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, we're born in the same year, so maybe like, I think I could understand her very well. So I think this is very time for incubating the tourism in Jeju Island, the and location, and I think that would be a good the policy. So I would like to ask you to consider these factors as the policy. Mic goes to the Professor Moon Sung-jong from Halla University. Thank you very much for your discussion. Well, the visitors numbers passed 15 million, and there were several indicators produced by KTO, Korea Tourism Organization. Then what's the capacity of the over tourism? If there were some like the numbers about that, it would be good. But well, I was sorry that I could not get that information. Well, Jeju Island is actually changing. I think it's transforming. Well, also the ocean tourism actually is full already. Snorkeling, the paddling, the scuba diving. Not only those, but the fishing village development, the project is also being implemented. So all those rural areas and the fishery villages, I think they all should change. Well, you talked about the acceptance posture for encouraging the quality tourism. I think that's really necessary. Well, we have 4 distinctive seasons, unlike other the representative tourist spots in other countries. Well, Hawaii has about like 8 million tourists, but we have 15 million tourists. So we boosted our number of tourists, but the environmental pollution issue rose. And well, when we were looking into the qualitative tourism growth aspect, I actually was surprised to see some of those phenomena. Well, Jeju Island is already too packed. We have amusement park like Shinhwa World, and well, we have the ocean, the tourism, all the coffee shops on the streets are full. There are a lot of like recreation facilities. Everything is already full, and well, there's everything already on the island. So, should we take a perspective of tourists, or should we take a perspective of like, businesses or the local residents? When local residents are satisfied, then the tourists are satisfied. So I think that's the actually future direction that we should go for. So getting away from the conventional way of thinking, we should not think our local residents as a like supplier perspective, but we have to change that. What's important here is the acceptance posture. Well, Professor Kim mentioned this already. Tourists also should hold responsibility of being a happy tourist. Well, if you just spit on the chewing gum on the street, the fine is this. If you smoke on the street, the fine is this. Well, actually, there is a high fine, but the visitors to Singapore still they do it. Well, the jaywalking or the speeding on the street, those were really happening. Well, we have to come up with the acceptance posture. Well, in fact, to address or to achieve the quality tourism, what kind of attitudes do we need? or what kind of the factors do we need? We have a bunch of the contents. Let's just revisit our tourist destinations in Jeju Island. Or if you just be a kind of like general tourist, and then if you take a tour, then there are unvisited and very special places in Jeju Island. Well, actually, tourists know hotter spaces than the local residents. Well, local residents are not visiting those places, but only tourists and using the rented cars, they are visiting these spaces. Well, so if tourists visit certain space a lot, and then it will become a hot space. So, well, from perspective of seeking for quality tourism, well, what kind of focus should we find? The quality tourism should be thought from this perspective to find a good place. And well, Professor Kim mentioned that, well, if you search for like the movie map, and then you can find all those movie clips recorded on Jeju Island. And if you search for like festival information, all those things can be also found. So in this way, we should provide information in a smart manner. And there were a lot of like variants to develop our tourism, like MERS, SARS, COVID-19. Well, I think, well, we experienced all these already, and we are kind of like, we have to take an attitude to make the suitable policies to address these external factors for the purpose of the development, rather than focusing on the market, the profitability. We have to think about the fishery villages and rural villages in Jeju Island. Well, now, well, the buzzword is wellness, and a lot of budget is actually spent on this purpose. Why should we make the wellness-centered areas that much? Well, rural age villages and fishery villages, why are those places should be developed in that way? So we have to really think about the true ways of like improving the quality tourism in Jeju Island. Thank you very much for your opinion. And for last session, Vice President Robert Yaya is here. And well, we have interpreters here, so I will speak in Korean, I think. Okay, thank you very much, and please speak in Korean.
Well, I will be brief too. Well, in my industry, the industry I'm working for, well, you can speak English if you want.
Business depends on purely foreign tourist market. And so the foreign tourist market for Jeju is, I think, at best maybe 10% during good years, but still important. Regarding this, I think Jeju needs to figure out what type of destination it wants to be. I think this answer is going to be different, slightly different for the foreign market and for the domestic market. I also agree with Professor Moon that we cannot compare ourselves to tropical islands such as Hawaii, Phuket, Bali. It's a different environment. Jeju has 4 seasons, weather-wise, it's not a great place. It doesn't have, the beaches are nice to look at, but you cannot really use them. What Jeju needs, I think, what would be helpful, especially for the foreign market, to get people to stay here longer, is numerous high-quality, high-value-added facilities that mesh well with the environment. What I mean is not an emphasis on outdoor activities so much, because you're limiting the time that you can use those facilities. This is important, I think, to attract, and these facilities can be numerous things. But this is important for attracting foreign guests as well as having domestic guests return. And it's also very important for tax revenue. Instead of coming people here and just spending money at local restaurants and cafes, which is important, sort of, I don't like to use this word, elite tourism. High value add customers to come in, spend money, spend time. And in order for that to happen, you need to have the proper facilities, which I think the government, together with a public-private partnership, should speak with many groups to try to facilitate the development of such. That's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
예, 이건 좀 짧게 해주셨는데 핵심적으로 어쨌든 고부가가치.
Thank you very much. So you emphasize the importance of high added value tourism. So I would make some remarks. Well, actually, since I'm a moderator, so I decided I would not say anything. But well, looking back the history of the tourism. So in 2016 and 2019, the number passed 15 million. But do you think the characteristic would be the same? Well, in 2016, it was kind of like group tour. Well, Chinese tourists visited certain places, so only specific places were really like facing congestion. So only like set or the contracted places or the tourist destinations were visited again and again. So the small and business in tourism businesses in Jeju Island, they could not had a lot of benefits from that. But in 2019, it was different. Individual tourists were the majority. They used the rented cars or they used the public transportation. It was shown in the big data. But a lot of these tourists, they visited every small spot on the island. And the traditional markets or the businesses or the stores in the local community, those places were visited a lot too in 2019. Well, when we analyzed the credit card usage, the history, we could get this data, and the duty-free shop was 20%, and the accommodation was the rest. But small businesses, they recorded 50. Well, when we say the food and beverages, most of those credit cards, the payment was only about like $5 or something. So, well, there's a kind of visitor's log, and then you can find all the visitors, the origination. Some are from Seoul, some are from Busan, Daegu. So you can find many locations and cities. So when we ask the business owners, well, did you analyze those? And then these owners could find that, well, I thought we were actually the area-specific restaurant, but, well, the visitors were more than 30%. So that was the finding. So I can say, even though the number was about the same in 2016 and 19, but actually the characteristic is different. And JTO data was shown previously. Well, we visited several places. Well, the speaker is not using the mic, so I cannot interpret. Well, to my knowledge, actually, well, that was the data I had. Well, these days, individual tourists are the majority. And I can definitely say that the small business owners have more income. That I can say that. Well, previously there was a saying that the conglomerates were taking most of those revenues, but that's not the trend anymore. Previously, we had to put the quantitative tourism aside for the development, but that's not it anymore. Well, the revenues for the small business owners can grow. And as the quantitative tourism grow, we can grab 2 rabbits with 1 stone. And then it can contribute to local economy significantly. There was an interview I looked into before. The Korea National Statistics they had said that our economy grew specifically. Well, the European countries, they are depending on the overseas, the inbound tourism highly, but, well, actually our dependency is only 2.8%, so, well, it's very good. So that was the saying. Well, as a whole, from the national point of view, well, we can say in that way, but I was kind of sorry. Well, from the national perspective, we were doing well, but for Jeju Island, it was kind of a bittersome effect. The semiconductor, the automobile industries, if these industries are put together, I think that's the same the portion as the tourism industry. So we are making the same amount, almost similar amount of the outcomes. But can we stop the semiconductor industry, or well, they can just manage well, and then the industry does not have to stop. If the industry goes well, then Korean economy can grow even further. Well, for Jeju Island, well, the tourism is the automobile industry or the semiconductor industry, like the whole nation. Well, the tourism is an attractive industry, and Jeju Island has a lot of tourist attractions. But, well, is quantitative growth a hurdle for the Jeju Island's tourism? I don't believe so. I think we can use these quantitative and qualitative growth in parallel. And I think we can have capability to manage these two. Well, since I have enough time, so, well, I will say a little bit more. When visitors come to the Jeju Island, we prepare Jeju Island to Boracay or the Banacha.
사실은
I think the difference is that in their cases, for example, Boracay Island, 9,000 people are living there, but the tourists accounts for 20 to 30,000. In Venice, 50 million people are living there, but the tourist number outnumbers that. In Jeju, we have 700,000, but the daily tourist account is like 40 to 50. And the area, the size are different as well. So we have differences and similarities between Jeju and other tourist destinations. So we should come up with different conditions. But the homework that we have is that small businesses and traditional markets in Jeju Island. This is not accurate number, but they are enjoying a higher revenue right now. So the relations between local residents and small business owners are not quite positive yet, so that should be resolved soon. Local residents are not really completely happy about having more tourists in Jeju. On the other hand, small businesses, they are expecting more and more tourists. Why local residents are not really happy about having more tourists? It's because they have a kind of adverse effect, like crowdedness and traffic jams and sewage problems. So that affects the quality of my life. So that is the reason why local residents are not completely happy about more tourists. But if Jeju truly wants to have a quality tourism, the small business should be more activated. But at the same time, the people, the Jeju residential people, they should be happy too. So we need to consider both of Jeju people and small business people as well. So now we have like 8 minutes left. Thank you for your insightful comment. Well, I shared like the qualitative growth, and as Professor Hong said, quality growth is not against quantitative growth. In terms of sustainable growth, we should not develop everything without any principle. In terms of content, well, I totally agree with that. But I come to Jeju almost once every month and have visited many places, and I think I have quite familiar with every corners of Jeju. And I personally think that during my presentation, I mentioned that the awareness of the tourism industry or tourism business people their awareness should be improved. As mentioned, Jeju has 4 distinctive seasons that can be a strong competitiveness. So by using that, we can come up with more tourism products. And maritime tourism should be upgraded with a strict principle. It shouldn't be indiscreet tourism. So that one I have in my mind, which is important, I think. And the connection with the on-land businesses, tourism businesses also is important. Supporting fisheries industries and other industries should also be taken into consideration as well. And we mentioned about Treble bubble. It sounds like it's related to tourism because we call it Treble bubble. But it's not really quite apt in terms of tourism and tourists. And the policymakers are quite negative about introducing Treble bubble in Korea. Rather, they are looking for safer and more stable ways. And we have a lot of contents in here, in Jeju. But all those variety of contents have not been really utilized. And I think each and every tourist destinations in Jeju are all but similar. Small businesses in Jeju they can be greatly affected by unsustainable way of developing tourism. So from the practical perspective, we need to approach Jeju tourism, taking many lessons from others, like Singapore. So coming up with good measures is important, but we have to practically carry out that. So I can give you some more time to senior researcher Shin-dong-il. So we have this life cycle from the very beginning of our life. And tourism also has this life cycle. The reason why I talk about this is because it makes me think about where Jeju tourism stands in its life cycle. And personally, I think that it is suffering from growth pain, meaning it has a great potential, it has a lot of rooms to improve, and we have a lot of opportunities. But in terms of qualitative growth indicator or growth, well, if the tourists are not satisfied with the destination, it doesn't mean anything. But at the same time, the people living in that destination should be happy as well. At the same time, environment should not be destroyed. So we need to be a little bit more careful, and we should be considerate to every other subject. Thank you. It's ironic that over tourism and COVID-19, the resolution is to disseminate or to decentralize or spread out the tourists. And the local residents should be happy living here too. And I totally agree about brand positioning that was mentioned by other presenters. So by coming up with better policies in cooperation with other stakeholders, I think the genuine qualitative growth is possible. Vice Chief Oh Hyung-hee, do you have any more thing to say? Thank you for your insightful ideas. I think all those ideas and opinions can be reflected into the ways and measures that we can come up with for tourists and Jeju residents as well. What about Vice President Robert Yaya? That's all. Do you have questions from floor? So that concludes our session.
Once again, please give one round of applause to all those panelists and speakers. Let's take a short break. And from 3:20, there is another session for partnering for Asia water issue dissemination and water welfare enhancement, prepared by the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for